I'd like this to be as informal as possible. Really good. Just to cover noise a little bit. As formal as possible. I'd love for you guys to ask as many questions as possible. That's kind of, I think, the easiest thing, because the reality is I have no idea what you don't know. Awesome. Hey. I don't know what you don't know. I don't know what you want to know. I really have no idea. So I created a presentation, but it may answer exactly 0 of your questions. So it'd be a lot better if you just asked them to me. Is everybody cool with that?
Yeah.
All right, raise your hand if you're cool with that. We're all good. Awesome. Okay. Has anyone here ever heard of what a focus group is?
Yeah.
Focus group? Hell yeah. Anybody not know what a focus group is? Dang, you don't know? It's okay, man. I didn't know like yesterday. Okay, but we'll talk about it briefly. Like a focus group, what we do in a focus group is, I don't know how many of you guys saw my presentation yesterday, but one of the things I talked about was sort of how you get bonus votes. Like, because you have a bunch of people you can kind of count on to vote for you, and then to put you over the top, to get over 50%, you're going to need more people, right? And so what you really want to do is get some of those people in a room, get them talking, and find out what they care about, okay? And then after that, you actually do a poll, not of the people in the room, but sort of the people that need to vote for you, and see how well your story and things you care about resonates with them. So I want to do a few kind of focus group test questions. And we can talk about sort of how those answers end up in the campaign messaging. I put the poll up on here. We'll get to that in just a second. So let me ask you this. In thinking about your home country, your home state, your home district, whatever it is, do you guys feel in general, and I really want a show of hands, and like I want people to tell me what they think about this. Like, do you feel that Georgia, for instance, is moving in the right direction, or do you think it's moving in the wrong direction? Who here thinks it's moving in the right direction? Okay. Either way is okay. There's no judgment here. I mean, you are being graded, but that's later. Just kidding. Okay. Who here thinks it's moving in the wrong direction? Yeah? 2 people? It's totally okay. Like, I'm not, yeah, it's fine. Would you mind telling me why you think it might be moving in the wrong direction?
Yeah, I'm finance professional.
Yeah?
And I used to take a glance on what's going on in the economics.
Yeah.
So I think that the decisions made by this government, which is now running the Georgian government,
yeah,
made the wrong decision for economies, because this is the currency inflation or something like that happening now, and they made the populistic decisions. For example, the insurance for all of our population, exactly no grouping of who need that and who not, and that's why the economic growth slowed down, and now it's only 2%, while the previous governments, during the previous governments, it was that approximately 10%.
Wow. Okay.
That's why, but there is another topics which make our guys who like new direction and say that, for example, police is better, or in the jails there is a better situation now than it was the previous.
Yeah, there's 2 sides to every story. Let's talk about the first thing you're talking about first. Does anyone else here think the economy could be going better in Georgia? Everybody? Can you raise your hand? Pretend I can't hear you. Fantastic. Okay. Do you think that young people have a difficult time getting jobs in Georgia? Jobs that pay what they'd like them to pay?
What is the baseline?
The baseline is whatever you think it is. See, that's the beautiful thing about this. I know. This is why there's no right or wrong. Like, when you hear the question, I want you to just, there's no like, I mean, the reality is that she's talking about 10% growth versus 2% growth, and we can get into like whether it's actually on the wrong track. The whole question is whether you feel it's on the wrong track. Yeah. Because if I think, if my target market feel that it's on the wrong track, I do a very different campaign than if I think it's on the right track, right?
Feeling-based, not fact-based.
Yeah. It's all feelings, but those feelings are based on their internal facts. Because the reality of the situation is no one's taking a full, other than you, taking a full measure of the market, right, to decide what they vote. Basically, if people think it's on the wrong track, a lot of times what they're doing is they're explaining their own situation.
I'm sorry for
No, you're great. You're not interrupting. You're doing awesome.
I'm 26 now.
Congratulations.
I'm working already 7 years And,
Whoa.
it wasn't tough for me to find a job during the previous government and during this government. So this can define my attitude toward the government, because I was working in the public sector during the previous government. It was Ministry of Justice, and I was working on this government in the public sector. It was Ministry of Health and Social Care. So I can compare between that structure, what was during the previous government and during this. I was paid good, and I have more than average salary in Georgia.
Yeah.
But now and that time, for my age and for my gender, I was paid more than average.
Ah.
But that's why I think that I can compare it to each other, because I've experienced everything during that and during now.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah? Hey.
I'm Zaya Maloshin. I'm from Georgia. I'm Chinese. I think that getting a job in Georgia is kind of a real big problem. I think so, because some of the students are searching for a job, but it's really hard to find in the public, like in the statement. I'm working right now doing my internship in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but it was kind of too hard to get a job there, because there are so many people working there for years, and it was really hard for me. I have to do write really so many exams in English, in math, and everything goes together. So I think it's kind of hard to get a job in the public.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And it seems like it's a sentiment that a lot of people share, right? And so, like, if I'm talking about, like, let's say you guys are my target demographic, right? And I'm running a race here in Georgia, and I get the feeling from you guys that jobs are hard to come by, things are on the wrong track, then that's the message that I'm gonna send. Like, so yesterday we talked about the mayoral election of Megan Barry. Do you remember the blonde woman who was talking about running for Nashville? I don't know if you remember. She definitely existed as a human. I didn't make her up. But she worked with the previous mayor, and so she did a poll very clearly that said people felt that Nashville was going in the right direction. So her goal was to continue all of that. And I'm going to play a video later that shows that. But one of the things that comes on the second part of is Georgia on the right track or wrong track is what kind of candidate do you want, right? And I want to do this as a show of hands. Do you want someone who's going to reach across the aisle to people that disagree to try and work out a policy? Or do you want someone that's going to be a fighter a fighter for what we believe in? And don't worry about what we believe is, right? Because we get to that afterward. Yeah. But like, would you rather have a fighter? Everybody hands for fighter?
Fighter or what?
Hold on, coming to it. Hands for fighter or hands for someone who's going to reach across the aisle to develop solutions with everyone involved. So would you rather have a fighter? Hands?
I'm a fighter.
You're a fighter, good for you. Anybody else fighter? No one else wants a fighter. Nobody wants a fighter? Like, hey, come on, fighter? No one? Good for you, thank you. No one else wants a fighter? Someone that's gonna like go and kick some ass? Like, we need someone like that out there, don't you think? No one?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, man. These guys, oh, come on. All right. You want a fighter?
I disagree.
You disagree with me?
I disagree. I think you need both.
You can't be both. I gotta be
But then changes dependent on one person, and when this person is gone, it's not sustainable. So
all right, so here's
having
what I'm
an
gonna do.
agreement that involves everybody is more
Okay, all right. Well, I'm not
sustainable.
gonna fight you on this.
It's not about the person, I think. It's about the people.
Stop with your complications. We only have two options here.
Okay.
We only have a
Thanks,
fighter
Mike.
or someone's going to reach across the aisle, a compromiser. Fighter or compromiser. So I just want your initial feelings. How many for fighter? Is it just going to be me? Three of us. Three of us want a fighter. Okay. How many people want a compromiser? You guys, what a bunch of wimps. All right, that's fine.
Right.
I'm going to show you some videos. I'm going to show you
Compromise
some.
for us.
Hold on, just you. Enough of you. Okay. So I'm going to show you a couple of videos, and then we're going to ask the same question again. Okay? Give me 1 second here. And a brief.
I'll choose fighter after the video.
Huh? We'll see. Just oh my God.
Combination.
Yes, both of you. I'm going to play fighter first for the three people that agree with me. Hold on a second. Everything's going to be fine. Okay. This is an actual campaign video. This was done. This is for a candidate who's actually going to be running this year, I believe. And this is part of her kickoff. And you're going to see Yeah.
You
Alright, you
just
guys ready?
said fighter, you never said progressive fighter.
Good point.
There's no right or wrong answers here, except for the people that disagree with me.
That's cool, but I agree.
The dark clouds are now over our nation. And this is an important time in our country's history. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, our children and our grandchildren are going to look back and they're going to want to know what we did. This is a test. There are efforts coming out of Washington, D.C. to dismantle healthcare, to make cuts to education, to roll back civil rights gains. There are efforts to roll back voting rights gains. And Trump is sending Latino communities a very clear message. And that message is that we don't matter. And that our civil rights and our constitutional rights don't matter. You know what? They matter to us. My friends, it's time for us to come together and face that challenge head on together. We are going to do what is right and what is good. And what is right and what is good is health care for everyone. What is right and what is good is protecting civil rights. And what is right and what is good is fighting for humane and intelligent immigration reform. We are going to support investment in education. Our kids should not bankrupt themselves to get a college education. This community needs to send a fighter to DC. I am here today to tell you that I am running for Congress and I want to represent this community in Washington, D.C. in a place that needs our voice the most. Y necesito su apoyo, necesito su trabajo, necesito su amor para ganar.
Okay. So, hopefully this will stop after this video. Okay, so before I ask you how many people are now with me on being a fighter, what did you hear in this video? What resonated with you from this ad? Anything? What? What is that? Narcos. This guy. Don't listen to this guy. Boo this man. What did you hear? What did you take away? If someone tomorrow came and said, "Hey, did you watch that campaign video? What did you take away from it?" What would you say? Anybody?
Yeah.
This person again. Okay, go ahead. What did you say?
Okay, you can ask.
No. I'm with you 100%. Go ahead. What do you want?
I saw the civil rights. I saw Trump was a bad guy. I saw
He is a
that.
bad guy. Go ahead.
I saw that she wants to show us that she knows what the problem is for more of the society of that state.
Yeah.
So that is what.
That's good. That's very good. And so what you
And one more. I'm sorry.
Yes. I'm not surprised. Go ahead.
And that people that Afro-Americans and Latinas who are caring of your health and security, like police and an emergency and everything you need to feel secure.
That's actually a secondary point that I hadn't even thought of. That's really interesting. That basically you've got a lot of service workers and people that are holding up and keeping us together. Okay. So did anyone take away from that she literally at some point says that she's a fighter, but did you understand, or did you get,
I think that one of the main points was that we are going to fight together.
Yeah.
She said that she's not going to fight alone, but together with her electoral.
Right. That we're going to be unified in fighting against something. Trump or bad policies. It's not necessarily, she's not being that specific about what it is, but she's definitely going to fight for something, right? What you got?
Comment and question.
Yeah.
I really liked the construction of this spot that on one hand she is focusing on Latino community, announcing that she's representing Latino community and shows that she is a part, also speaking in Spanish, but it's very visible that she is also taking care. She wants to take care also about other minorities. So they have African Americans
Yeah.
and other ethnic groups. So it's very interesting. This combination of the minority she is representing and other minorities. And it's interesting how effective this spot was, how she was perceived by other minority groups, because as I understood, some minority groups can have some competing interests.
That's
kind of-
absolutely true. And that's a super high level analysis, and it's very good. And there is something I'm going to get to one second. That's actually very interesting. So the slide in which she talks about civil rights, she has an African American family.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear from her district and her makeup that she's going to need not just the Hispanic community to put her over the edge, right? You can see that from the very beginning. But she needs to do, when we were talking about yesterday, we're talking about what your base vote is and finding how ways to maximize your base vote. She clearly believes that her base vote can be maximized by by trying to get a high Hispanic turnout, and it seems pretty clear from that ad. Yeah.
One thing I think like it's in this ad, she just calls what's obvious to the people to whom it's obvious, and she just like doesn't, offer any solution to it. She just calls it, like, have you watched that Family Guy episode where it's like Louise is running? Yeah, she's like, the wife is running for the...
Yeah. School board or city council? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, city council, and she just says like one word and everybody's cheating.
Yeah.
Yeah, something similar to that.
As long as you get the word right,
Yeah.
it works.
One
Yeah.
more comment also.
Yeah. The guy
Regarding
thinks the economy's good. Go ahead.
regarding this fighter non-fighter thing, for me and I think for many, this video really doesn't resonate with me because these sentiments that policymakers have, I really already don't believe in them. Zero.
It's about the belief.
Zero resolution for their this value shutouts, because there is one thing that whether this person really means that,
Yeah.
and the second thing whether this person, even if believes, will be able to change something in policymakers or this their power of change. Because I mean, come on, it's really hard to change even slight piece. And with these sentiments, it's somehow for me it's even some fairy tale thing, and I just dismissing this because this person thinks that with this make me believe that everything is so simple.
That's a fair point. And I'm going to show you another video that might go with what you're saying. The interesting thing, what's interesting is if you were going to get a poll, if you had a live poll call you and you gave that response, the pollster would write down that you were unlikely to vote. And that's because if you don't believe any of the messages, and if you believe that there's no way to get anything done, those are the sentiments that people associate, that pollsters associate with disassociating from the process. And I don't know if you vote or not. I'm just,
I would always.
sometimes they get it wrong.
In the end, I will still choosing something, but not based on these sentiments and these videos and campaigns. I'll try to somehow.
I'm with you.
Are you sick of a government that looks like this? Well, you can change it by voting for John Patrick Carney for state auditor. John Patrick Carney puts you, the people of Ohio, first, not a political party. The proof? 92% of the bills he sponsored or co-sponsored were supported by Republicans and Democrats. That's right, 92%. That's the kind of leadership we need.
Okay, so that's the alternative. That is someone who wants to work across the aisle for compromise. So I'm going to ask you guys again. How many of you guys would like a fighter, and how many would like a progressive?
But
Fighter?
I think you have to make us choose between two of them.
I know.
Like, for
It's an
example,
unfair
I don't
situation.
think what they say, like the fighter, what they say for me is what I identify necessary as a fighter. It's more who we empathize more because of their advertisement, while I would read their campaigns.
I know, it's not fair. I know, I'm a bad person. I agree with you.
Are they running for the same?
They're not running for the same position. That's a very good point. This is not an actual election between these two people.
And she does a more emotional video.
Okay.
Well, he shows some facts like I will do 92%, whatever.
He does, but what I'm saying, all of the things that are going on in this video are actually associated with the concepts. So, for instance, the music you hear in the first video, that's very much, stronger terms, right? And it's supposed to engender that kind of thing. So in the second video, you have much warmer music. It's much more like a cell phone ringtone. I know you don't like it. But the idea there is that he's trying to create a very different feeling than she is. And so what happens is if you ask people, do you want a progressive fighter or do you want someone who's going to compromise? We all want someone who's going to fight on some things and compromise on others, right? But we have to force people into one or the other so that we know which way to go, right? So,
the woman had better team for advertisement.
Yeah.
It's possible. It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had in the president election in 2006 two oppositional candidates, and one was merely fighter, another was more like a negotiator, and it kind of attract different target audience. So I think it was planned. It was planned before, like to have to get as much people as possible, because some people who disagree with current power, they for instance would like to have evolutional changes.
Yeah.
And then you have a sweet guy with a family and things. Or they want to revolution changes, and then you need this fighter who will say, okay, that's enough, and we need to do something. Yeah.
Right. Well, so what's interesting here is also that if you've got a race between two people, they can't have the same background and personality, because if they end up in the same place, there's no way to differentiate them, and so the lesser of the two is going to fall off, and they won't know who that is. It's just a very bad place to be. Yeah.
So, what do they do if they're like if they're competing against a person who has the same values?
I know, right?
They change the message, no? Like one has to change.
Yeah. So
do
basically,
you have an example of situation like this and how it was solved?
That's a very good question. Where two people have the same bio going in.
Yeah.
So the answer to that question is they wouldn't. And because what happens is if you see that you have the same bio as someone else, you have to find a point to differentiate. And the answer that happens there is you end up with negative advertisements. Because what happens is you start saying, I'm the real fighter, and they're not. They're going to capitulate with the other side. They're not going to do what they say they're going to do, whereas I will. I'm the better fighter than they are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's a bad strategy overall, isn't it?
Wow, that's rough. It can be a bad strategy, but it's like you have to, most at least Democratic politics, break down this way. So if you look back at the 2016 primary, right, you have Hillary, right, who tacks to the middle, talks about all the sort of things that she's saying. She's doing some fighting rhetoric, right, but Bernie is a much better fighter than she is.
Why he lost then?
Why did you lose?
Yeah,
because the election wasn't necessarily about which one was the better fighter, and there's a bunch of other things going on in there. But what you would see in the election is she started out with a bunch of basically saying, you know, I've got certain foreign policy positions that are very similar to Republicans. I've got, my healthcare position is much more of a middle of the road. He started doing this fighting rhetoric, and she had to move closer to him.
She was compromising kind of more.
What do you think? Was Trump a fighter during the elections?
What do you think?
I think he was.
I think he was too.
But now we all want him to be more compromising in everything.
Well, yes. And this goes back to your concern, which is the difference between a fighting personality and someone who's actually going to get things done.
But
right?
it's not about the fight, whether the candidate is fighter or not. It's about the belief. I may believe in fighter. It's not about that what I should choose, whether fighter or the other person.
Yeah.
It's about belief. Generally, I don't believe. For example, me, I never believe in campaigns. I just go and see what the background of the guys who are going to be the president or prime minister. But it's about the people who have low education, for example, economics and something, and no?
It's getting harsh in this room. Yeah, no.
It's about the people who just want emotional decision, not the facts or not the...
Sure. Have you ever watched Star Wars without the music?
No.
Yeah. Take a second and watch Star Wars without the music and see how you feel about the characters. I mean, the reason I bring this up is to say that all these things are the same. Like, we can say that we have views about the economy.
That's awesome.
We can say we have views about the economies, and we certainly do, but we also have feelings that we attach to those. Because like, if you talk to someone about the economy, you're very quickly going to get to the term fairness. And fairness is an emotional thing. And so the reality is we have these objective views, but they're so imbued with our feelings of them that you have to deal with the feelings too. Sorry, you were saying?
I was thinking that it is super shallow. It's about creating perceptions and emotional reactions, and there's no answer to the how at all. So if
this is rough, guys. I gotta tell you, this is our only system.
I think we're creating perceptions of fighters or agreeers, but there's nothing about how things are being done. And you can have a perception of a fighter, but be a negotiator at the table. And so
that's totally true.
It's totally distangled.
It is a false dichotomy to some degree, but the reality of the situation is that if you feel strongly about your position, so let me take you to that poll, which is what I was going to build into. This is an actual poll that was done in a race that I worked on 2 years ago. The first question that we asked pollsters, we asked people in the poll, was whether or not you thought the state was on the right track or the wrong track. And you can see that 60% thought it was on the wrong track, right? And as soon as you know that, as soon as you know that people think that things are headed in the wrong direction, that changes the way you attack every other issue. And so if you go down here, this one says open-ended. What that means is we're not offering them any choices. We call them up and we say, what do you feel is the most important issue or problem the governor and state legislature should make a top priority? And you don't say anything. And then they provide these. You'll find that 52% of them mentioned education, right? So you're going to very quickly get into a situation where you're talking about education in this race. Then what I want to bring you down to, though, is, let's see here. Those are all name IDs.
Are those based on the actual data? Or?
This is the real poll. This is all. This is 100% correct, or it's what the people said when we called them. Yeah. It's not. I'm not trying to say these are the biggest problems in Georgia. This is what the people thought they were. And I'll go ahead and start with it. But basically, this is a Likert scale. This is what you get whenever you're testing whether or not people like people. Nathan Deal is the governor of Georgia. Very favorable, somewhat favorable. This is the total of these two. Somewhat unfavorable, very unfavorable, the total of those two, right? This is the number of people who recognize the name and could give you a rating. This is the percentage of people that could. Those people are not, none of the people on this list, other than B and C, are candidates in this particular race. But you have to know how they feel about other things that we all sort of agree on, so you can balance it against that. So that's what all of this stuff is.
How did you get the names?
Which names? How do we choose?
Yeah.
Do you mean? That's a great question. So some of these are easy and some of them are hard. The reason we chose Nathan Deal is because he was the current governor of Georgia. That gives you a great sort of tact for what the overall district is like. So Nathan Deal's total unfavorable is 74%. Okay? Keep in mind he was the sitting governor of Georgia. This is an aberrational district. This is a much more left-leaning district, much more liberal district than the state overall. We learned that from Nathan Deal. If someone has a tremendously high unfavorable rating, if you can attach your opponent to that person, that'll hurt your opponent. So we need to know what the negatives are in the district about who we can use to attach. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. There was a fear in this race also that we would be, anyone notice the cameraman? Because I just did. Okay. There's a fear in this district that our candidate, which was Elena Parent, would be attached to Nathan Deal because she voted for certain things that he signed and that he championed in the end. And we were very concerned about what his positives and negatives were. And we were right to be, because 74% of them felt that he was terrible, and 42% of the entire group felt that he was very unfavorable, which is even worse than somewhat unfavorable. The Tea Party is another similar one. Does anyone know what the Tea Party is? Everybody familiar with that? Okay, the Tea Party is a group of very conservative Americans who push religious issues and very conservative immigration positions. In the Republican Party, they are sort of the most conservative. And they are also something we're testing. You can see they actually did even worse than Nathan Deal. They're at 93% total unfavorable. Only 6% didn't know who they were. It's pretty bad news. You compare that to some of the ones who are very favorable, right? You've got Roy Barnes, who's the previous governor of Georgia, Jason Carter, who is the grandson of the president, he's from the same area. Those two are the ones you want to attach to the most. So we needed to test those because we thought those people would come out for us. We needed to know whether or not we could put them on mail pieces and on internet ads, on Facebook ads, to show that we are similar to those people. Yeah?
Yeah, I was thinking it can be helpful before the election for some days, but close to the election you have to have very precise scaling. For example, very favorable should be, from 1 to 5. Yeah. Then you can get really good answer, very close to, but you really need to know there's a 10% difference between the candidates. You have to know.
Yeah,
which is
this is a very good point. And so the purpose of this poll is to actually do a projection. Because what we're trying to do in this poll is to test our messaging and test our candidacy against our opponent in terms of what will happen, right? And so what messages work and what messages don't. So this is taken, let me make sure, I don't know the exact date, let me check it real quick. It was done March 10th through 12th of 2014, okay? So that is 2 months ahead of the election, 2.5 months out of the election, before we sent any mail, before we did anything else. And you'll notice that this is obviously the question you want to know the answer to. In the May Democratic primary election for state senate, if it were held today, for whom would you vote, Elena Parent or Kyle Williams? This is the entire question we care about, right? And you'll notice it's 16% to 16%. And 2/3 of the electorate have no idea who they're going to vote for. 67% have no idea. This is an open field. Both sides have 16%. And what we're going to show you is what happened when you send your message to each person. Okay? This is an internal poll. You'll never see a poll like this in the public. So we start looking at what people care about. The candidate will be a voice for democratic progressive values, lead the way to safeguard the environment, fight for marriage equality, protect women's rights to choose. Or a candidate who will be a voice for the middle class and lead the fight to restore the Nathan Deal cuts in public schools. You can see 56%. You're starting to divide it up. You're starting to figure out what messages work and what messages don't. And keep in mind, she is, like our candidate was, all of these things. It's a question about what we decide to talk about. You know what I mean? So you start, these has to do with incorporation. That's just sort of a positive, negative. And then what you do is, this is the important part. What you have to do is you have to be very honest about who you are and who your opponent is, and come up with a bio of each of them that is absolutely fair. If you slant it in any way, you're going to get a bad poll. So what we did here is this is a paragraph about our candidate, and this is the paragraph about our opponent. You'll notice these are both incredibly positive statements. Okay? And then the question is, what happens after you hear both things? Right? After you hear our positives and his positives, we end up going 50 to 26, right? So we both started at 16, we end up 50 to 26. That's a 24-point gap. Yeah?
Did I understand correctly that the sample of this poll was like 400?
Yeah, 400 people. That's all you need.
Is it democratic? Or
Is it, in
it
what
was
sense?
a likely democratic voters?
Yes, okay, so this is a Democratic primary, so we only want people that are going to vote in the Democratic primary.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's something I should have brought up. One of the things about statistics is you actually need about 400 people, 700 at the most, to actually get a really good poll. It gets your margin of error down to 3 or 4%, which is good enough for this. But you'll notice here that once we give the positives on both sides, right, our candidate goes up to 50% and theirs goes to 26. There's still some undecideds. Yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
So how did you choose those people? Like based on the location or randomly?
They were the candidates. So my client was Elena Parent, and this was the other person who was running against her. So
I meant the people.
The people, the sample.
Oh, the sample.
Yeah.
I'm dumb. Yes, that's a great question. I'm sorry. So let me go back to the top. Now, so basically let me explain, let me back up a little bit. What you want to know is who is going to vote in the election, right?
Yeah.
So the easiest way to do it is to ask someone, are you going to vote in the election? Okay? But that's not actually good enough because people actually don't give you a great number. So what you're really doing in these numbers is you can actually go through the voter file and see who voted in previous elections. And those are the people that are most likely to vote in your election, right? So you go through all the past things, you screen for people that are most likely to
Is this
vote.
information open for everyone?
Yes.
It is not open for everyone.
Wait.
This information.
Yes.
I know.
Wait, it is. Are you
So
saying it's
how
not?
can you find
Whose side are you on? I don't know. What's going on? Yeah, I'll show it to you. You want to see it? You want to see mine?
Where you can find this information?
But it's in US.
Okay, the situation is that in different countries, there
Yes,
is
yes, I know.
different
Well, but
approaches.
In
In our
Georgia,
it's
it's
called
totally different.
this is, yeah, hey man. So this is, the situation isn't, we don't know who they voted for in previous elections. We know whether people voted or not. Okay?
Percentage of how many people.
I'm talking about individuals. We can look at an individual and see what elections they voted
We
in.
don't have a.
No, this is in, I'm with you. Yeah.
And how did you approach them?
We called them on the phone.
And how many people, like?
How many people hung up? Lots.
And is it like 50% or like 90%?
That hung up on us?
Yeah.
If you use a live caller, as in use a person on the phone, it's much lower. If you use a machine, like what we call robocalling, most people hang up on that. You have to use a live caller to get good results, because what happens is, remember, we're asking open-ended questions, as opposed to saying, like, if you care about abortion, hit 1, right? That's not going to give you a very good poll. You have to have a live caller. But anyway, the sample of what we're going for is people we think are going to vote, and then we ask them questions to make sure they're going to vote. And the number one is, are you going to vote? Yeah.
Isn't this going to bias your pool, because essentially you collect information only from people, let's say, kind enough to answer. So maybe this can be a bias.
Yeah, well, that's what we're asking though. We want to know what their bias is. I mean, we want to know, we're using some objective criteria, which is whether they voted in the past, and some subjective criteria, which is asking them whether or not they're going to vote. But it's objective to us because we're not.
No, your sample can be biased, meaning that you get only people from a given, I don't know, category of the society.
But there's also
Yeah, people with phones, for instance. Yeah, no, I mean, no, I'm not trying to be funny. Like,
who want to answer? Who want to answer is not given that it's representative of the whole population.
What is it? I'm sorry?
The subgroup of your population that is willing to answer, you are not
right. So
is representative.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. There's two. I have two answers to that. One is that there's lots of things that we can account for. Like for instance, we need to make sure that our demographic sample that we get matches the district overall in terms of income, in terms of race, in terms of age, right? We also split between landlines and mobiles based on the percentages that are in the district. We just do a lot of things to account for that. But you're right, overall. I mean, it could be that everyone who hates us hangs up, and everybody who likes us answers the phone, and then we have terrible numbers. But what you'll see here is that there's sort of a correcting thing, and we'll get to that.
Can I ask a question about this?
Hell yeah, you can.
So this is like people who didn't know any of the candidates before.
So, right.
And
Now we're at the
saying,
point where we read them these explanations, and then they now know who the candidates are, only but with the information we gave them. If you recall before, 32% of people could rate them, and they split 16% to 60%.
So they rated actually all the time while you were reading this video?
So before, okay, so let me go back a little bit.
My question was different.
Oh, okay, that's all right. I'm going to answer this one, and then I'm going to ask you, get yours again. So this is before they know anything, okay? So we're basically saying to them, who would you vote for in this upcoming election? The candidates are Elena Parent and Kyle Williams. 16% say each. The rest of the people have no idea, okay? They have no idea. All right, so what's your question?
So the post descriptions are really similar to each other.
They are somewhat similar to each
other. The second guy has a kind of, let's say, hand-on experience on some of the stuff. Like he's a minority.
He is?
And there's mention of, I don't know, what's K-12 schools, but it's like...
kindergarten through 12. It's basically schools.
Yeah, it's a specific thing.
So here...
But then he goes like really small number up, but the other one is more general, kind of.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
So yeah, your question is, what is it that's pushing her up?
Yeah.
Right? If I had to guess, I would say the former state representative, the consumer rights, Yeah, and consumer rights. I would say those are the two things you're pushing.
Maybe there's something about him that is pushing her up, no?
You mean like, what would it be? We
I
only,
know
so
that
this is,
he's
if you
like-
think about statistically.
In Georgia?
What'd you say?
He's Republican, right?
No. These are both Democrats. This is a Democratic primary.
Oh, okay.
The term you're looking for is progressive. So you use progressive as a stand-in for liberal, because liberal is now, people consider it a terrible term. So both of them say that they're progressive, you see? So the question is, these bios have to be fair if they're going to give you the right results. So this is, we consider this a fair bio of each side. So we read the bios to them, okay? And then they give us a new number, right? And so what we're doing is we're testing to see what our bio does. Does that make sense?
Have you tried like a same thing with different people and do it in an opposite direction? Like read the first?
Yeah, we do that. It's random.
It's random.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't want. We're not trying to game the sample.
No,
this is. No, I'm with you 100%. And you do have to look out for this stuff. The whole game here is that if you slant it in any kind of way, you're going to get bad results. We have to know what people are going to do when we start telling everyone this.
And
Okay?
this bias should be really, really neutral and really.
Should be no bias at all, as best as you can do it. Now, the reality is you have to be very honest with yourself. Okay, so the next thing you're going to do is, test the negatives. Okay. These are the positive messages specifically that we're going to use, right? And we're going to use whichever one works the best, right? You can see the difference. The first one is the pro-choice one, okay? Most of them are saying, no difference, doesn't whatever. You can see 77%, 74, 79, 73. None of these are really being all that different from one another. So all of these are good messages to use. The top one, though, is this one. Parent voted against the Republican cuts to education. In the Senate, she will fight to restore the cuts, fully fund early childhood education, and invest more in K-12 schools. 55% much more likely. More than half of the sample is moved when you say that. So that becomes the core message that we're going to build around. The next one that does it is minimum wage. You'll notice that creating jobs did nothing, basically. And a couple of the others down here don't move. The other one is quality health care. Fully moves 90%, right? 63% positive. So that becomes the secondary message. So this is unfair, right? Because now we've only read positives on parent and not on Williams. She goes up to 59%, he goes down to 15. Okay?
Yes.
Now we do negatives. All right? We do negatives on each person. And we say, she stood with Republican Nathan Deal. Remember we test Nathan Deal at the beginning? She stood with Republican Nathan Deal and voted to cut the Hope Scholarship. 61% much less likely. Here she went to a conservative conference, 68% less likely. So there are hits on her too. So what we need to do is account for those hits and create a message that will essentially bootstrap her positives in such a way so that the negatives don't hurt her as much. We do the same thing. You see what happens here. After hearing this, 2/3 of people are less likely to vote for her. You drop to 48%. Now, this is just basically, this is your question about refusals. Let's see if I can find it.
I had a question about so people had to choose from so many options. How long was
How long does it take? Like 10% or 10 minutes. If you have a good questioner, people will stay on the call.
Oh, what do you say to them in the beginning? Like, I'm calling from...
Hey, I'm calling from ALG Research, some sort of neutral thing. Hey, I'm calling from ALG Research. I want to ask you a couple questions. Is that okay? And they're like, sure. And you're like, great. And then 10 minutes later, you hang up. It's not ideal. Most people do not abandon, but if they do abandon, then none of it is counted.
Do you always tell them how much time does it take?
They never tell.
I think people say it'll just take a few minutes. And the nice thing about a few minutes is that could be like 100.
Stefan, how much does a poll like this cost?
This one costs $14,000. 14,000.
One call. 400 people, right?
Well, no, it's for everybody. It's not for one person.
400 people, 14,000. Right?
Yeah, well, they have to call more than 400 to get 400 though.
But,
And, yes.
but this included also the making the questionnaire and
Yeah.
also-
There's a lot of skill in it. It's not just the calling, but yeah. Yeah, it's the entire package of it. It's the
So
people.
winning this campaign for 14,000, it's not
Wait.
much.
No, that's
That's
not
just for the
much.
poll, my friend. This whole campaign cost, we spent $275,000. Our opponent spent about $260,000, so it was over $500,000 overall. But that's because this is a race that wouldn't be fought on television. If you have to fight it on television, it's even more expensive. And I can actually go through mail pieces and how that all worked. I actually was only going to do this for like 3 minutes, but I'm glad we talked about it because it's important to know. All right. And so one of the things I'm going to show you is how, so we talked about those negatives briefly and how here they are right here. I'm going to show you a couple pieces, not from this race, on negatives and how those things work. Give me 1 second. Find it. Okay, so what you're doing at the first part is you're introducing yourself to the voter. That little bio that we talked about, and then the positive pieces, like Elena Farron's going to fight to bring back hope or whatever it is. I'm going to show you how that works. Okay, this ad's going to combine the positive on our candidate with the negative on the opponent. You ready? Everybody excited?
Yes.
I'm not going to play it unless you're excited.
Service is about putting others first. That's what Atif Karni has always done. First as a United States Marine in Iraq, and now as teacher, football coach, and father. But service is about putting others first. That's what Atif Karni has always done. First as a United States Marine in Iraq, and now as teacher, football coach, and father. But who is Bob Marshall serving by trying to ban many forms of birth control and outlawing abortions even in cases of incest and rape? Bob Marshall has his own agenda. It isn't us. This election for delegate is simple. Just us.
Atif Karni is clearly our guy. All right. So,
masterpiece of.
I know. That Bob Marshall. God, what a jackass that guy is. I know, let's go find him. Anyway, all right, so Atif Karni. So did you notice at the beginning, basically what that was is the bio piece? She's reading basically the bio piece and they're giving you the spikes, right? They're giving you the individual things like teacher, soldier, picture of soldier, teacher, coach, right? Service, right? Service. Then we see Bob Marshall and he just hates everyone, right? What did you say?
He's a bad guy, obviously.
He's a terrible person. You're absolutely right. It's down with Bob Marshall.
Why did they put the red horns on there?
But yeah, horns, I know. The art piece would have been, maybe that's a bit much. We'll save that for the closing act.
So is it legal to do things like this?
You can do whatever you want in the United States. It's amazing.
The other candidate can sue the.
Do you have Bob Marshall's video?
Do I have Bob Marshall's video?
Yeah,
Bob Marshall doesn't believe in technology, so he doesn't.
They should. He was in Georgia, definitely.
You want to see Bob Marshall's video?
Yeah, of course.
All right, man. Let's see Bob Marshall's video. Let's go. It's gonna happen. It's gonna be not very nice. I'll tell you that right now, because Bob Marshall's a bad person.
Yeah, I know. You convinced me.
Who won the election?
I can't tell you yet. So Bob Marshall, I should go ahead and tell you, Bob Marshall actually wins this election. Sorry, guys. But he just lost. He just lost this time, so get your deals on. This is a Virginia delegate race.
It's a delegate race for Democratic Party, so both are Democrats?
No, this is he's a Democrat, he's running against a Republican. Hold on, I'm trying to find it. I'm not sure he believes in the internet.
Yeah.
I also got a feeling that like American voters are kind of more idealistic than us, like in CIS countries.
Maybe we should
tend
just watch
to be
the.
more cynical, no?
I mean,
about like where
Really,
you don't believe in
none of this really resonated with me.
Americans are incredibly cynical.
Zero reaction.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, clearly you're not the target market for any of this. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, like, but Americans will say that they're cynical, but they still want to believe in things. I mean, like, I'm cynical, but I'm still an idealist at heart. So we're all of the things that we say we are. In the same way that we talked earlier about people want to be fighters and they also want to be compromisers, we're all cynics and idealists. And so the question is whether or not I, as a political strategist, can either A, make the idealist in you beat the cynic for my candidate, or, and I'll also accept this, make the cynic on the other guy beat the idealist. So I'm willing to accept your vote either way, for my candidate or against the other guy.
So this kind of techniques can work in like any part of the world.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the same universal thing.
Message and different kind
It
of
was in Georgia, definitely. This kind of campaign was in Georgia previously. That was about other candidates.
Oh, negative ads. Everyone says they hate negative ads, and they always work. I'm going to show you a different one actually, and this is important. So the way in which you inoculate your candidate against a negative ad is if people have an idea of who he is, and they have a feeling of where that person came from, and that they have unshakable core values that are intrinsic to them that will not move. Okay? And so I'm going to show you one that's supposed to engender that, and you can tell me whether it does.
Newly released documents show oil giant Exxon had scientific evidence 40 years ago
that
climate
negative
change
piece I'm
was
going to show
being
next.
fueled
Don't
by carbon
watch.
pollution.
My apologies. I'm not sure why we played the wrong one there. Okay, I feel better about this now. Oh, sorry.
Wrong one?
I don't know what's happening with the sound. Oh, you know what's happening? This is a left channel, right channel problem. He's saying like really inspirational things. Is that helpful? What do you want me to do?
Plug the jack more
Do you have a soldering gun? You don't? Okay. You want me to do what again?
No.
Oh, I see the issue. Yeah, man. I'm with you. I'm with you, bro. All right, be cool for a sec. This is good. Actually,
Yeah, I already believe him, you know.
I mean.
Yeah, the guy with mustaches.
Okay, let's try this again.
All together.
Just play.
Easy crowd.
Sorry.
The sun was shining, like blue sky.
The font is good. Pizza.
Oh, that was terrible advice. All right, chill for a second. We're gonna
try it while playing. Probably it's a better idea.
What do you want to do?
You could try it while playing.
Yeah. Okay. Somehow I feel the magic is being lost here, but I will continue to follow your advice as bad as it's going so far. Okay. Nothing so far. That doesn't work.
Oh, that was good.
No, it's just, you still can't hear him.
You
Okay,
can just
so,
say what he's talking about.
yeah, he's talking about his father and how his father would get up very early in order to make biscuits or something. And he would see that he would do every day. He would get, yeah, biscuits? Okay. And, oh, this has gotten ahead of me. I can back it up. Those are the biscuits. Everyone, those are the biscuits. And he's talking about how everyone needs biscuits. And how generous. He gave away some of the biscuits, but not all the biscuits. He'll still be responsible with taxpayer dollars. And this is him walking without biscuits. Yeah. Well, actually, that's appropriate since the quote is, "It's not what you say, but other people say about you." And that's exactly what's happening right now. He's talking to some other people about biscuits. Biscuits are great. He's looking for more dough. He will never stop searching for biscuits, no matter what anyone says about him. These are people without biscuits. Yes?
Watching Star Wars without the music.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing, except we can only have music now. And so this is the town to which he will bring biscuits.
What's the Attorney General? Is it like
attorney general is like the top, it's like the lawyer for the state, but it sues people on the state's behalf. This is the negative comparative piece right there, by the way. Yeah, so it defends the state against lawsuits, but it also cracks down on evildoers of all types.
So did he win?
Did he win? Jesse Ruiz? Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah.
It turns out no one ever's ever heard the audio, which is why. All right, Jesse Ruiz. Emma, this is a Colin Ruggiero special. Let's find out. Is Jesse Ruiz the Attorney General?
And the winner is biscuit. Magic biscuit.
Seems unlikely.
So just tell me yes or no.
Oh, he's still running. It's going on right now.
Okay.
We will update you in 9 months. Just watch that Facebook page. Just keep getting reloaded.
Do people vote for their main prosecutor? Or?
Yeah.
Yes.
In some states.
Well, not the people that are not the defendants, just people overall. Like, not the people that are actually being prosecuted. They don't get to choose who prosecutes them. No, it's a slightly more complicated system than that.
How do you choose?
How do I choose my prosecutor? Wait, I'm
No,
sorry, what?
for who? Like you work in campaigns for someone. How
Yes.
do you choose the candidate that you will
Yeah,
work
that's an
for?
interesting question.
Oh, the previous questions weren't very interesting?
Yeah.
That seems a bit rude, if I could give you some feedback. How do I choose who I want to work for?
Yep.
So that's a great question.
Yeah.
But basically, I will only work for Democrats, and I'll only work for people whose values I think will improve the office or the state in which they're running into. I'd really like to work for people that I also personally get along very well with, and so those are my two things.
Do you work across the states, like East Coast, West Coast?
I work only in the state of Georgia, which is the second best place called Georgia. Just kidding, guys. No, actually, yeah, I screwed that up. Anyway, the point is, but I work anywhere throughout that state, and I do some consulting work for individual groups, in addition to individual candidates.
Do you kind of estimate their chances of winning beforehand, before agreeing to it?
Yeah. Yes is the short answer.
So if you like the person but he's unlikely to win, will you say no?
How unlikely? So if their chances are 40% to win, that's fine by me. If their chances are 0%, that's not really a very good use of my time.
How do you estimate it?
That's just my guess before a poll. But after the poll, you have a pretty good idea. So I mean, like for instance, in this particular poll, so I was already on the race, but you saw that it was after the positives, it was 50 to 24, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry, is that correct? 50 to 26, which is a 24-point spread. In the election, she ended up winning 62 to 38, the exact same margin. The poll predicted it perfectly. So, I mean, the polling is pretty good. So if you get the messages right, the polling should bear you out. We talked a little bit about issue ads right there. I do want to mention about how issue ads work. Because what happens is, if you can find a weakness in your opponent, and you need to hammer that individual weakness, you actually don't want to be attached to it. Because if you're attached to it, people are like, oh, he's going negative, he's doing terrible things. So I'm going to show you an example of two things, two pieces that were actually very effective in both one. Hopefully they'll actually be audio, but who knows, really.
But how many polls do you conduct within one campaign?
How many polls?
Yeah.
You do one baseline poll at the beginning, right? And then you'll do tracking polls toward the end, but those are just like whose side are you with, just to make sure nothing's happening that you're missing, right?
One more question. So,
you can ask as many as you want, man.
Why this narrative is not popular and it's not breaking through like this narrative that Democrats and Republicans are saying more or less, and let's with real changes, and what Bernie some kind of was trying to.
Yeah. So okay. So let me answer that. I mean, you're asking like 4 questions at once. One of them has to do with the fact that we have very conservative ballot access rules, which means third parties have a difficult time getting on the ballot. That's one. So it's very difficult to get a third option. The second one is there is an argument that the parties are both sort of corporate-based and they're sort of going closer together, but Donald Trump has totally screwed that up. And so the Democrats no longer have to worry that people think the Democrats and Republicans are the same thing now. But I mean, like, it's a valid point, and it's happened overall. I mean, like, you always see the Green Party or like other conservative parties getting some votes, but mostly because of ballot access rules, they can't really get anywhere. All right, hold on one second. I'm going to show you two pieces really quick, and then we can move on to the next thing.
Guys, if Cory Gardner gets his way, you better buy extra insurance.
Oh my God!
Just say no to Cory Gardner. Now.
That's cool.
Guys. If Cory Gardner gets his way, better stock up on condoms. Just say no to Cory Gardner.
Colorado Bank entities responsible for the content of its advertising.
Okay.
That's cool.
The goal of those is to get people under the ages of 26 to vote against Cory Gardner, right? Doesn't matter who you vote for, they just won't want you to vote for that guy, right? And I kind of agree with him. He seems pretty terrible. What you notice about that is we have no idea who the other candidate is. His name's not mentioned. We don't even know what office he is. We just vote against that dude, right? And there's obviously two separate pieces, each 15 seconds. Those are actually web pieces that are, we're looking at here. But basically, you would have seen those on Instagram.
YouTube ads.
Huh?
YouTube ads.
Yeah. Wait, what?
Ads on YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube ads. Yes, they're good YouTube ads. YouTube is a bit stingy with their demographics, and so it makes it a little hard to target on YouTube. But yeah, overall, the problem with YouTube, this is the problem with YouTube, not to go too far down the road. Because YouTube is not the same kind of social network as Facebook or Twitter, we don't actually know who the person is unless they've signed in. And the sign-in doesn't have all the demographic information to tie it to the individual voter. So if I'm trying to hit this list of 15,000 voters, right, I can upload that list into Facebook, and then I can target each one of them. But if it's on YouTube, I can kind of guess where they're at. I don't know whether they're going to vote or not. They're not as good. If I have enough money, I'll put it on YouTube. But if I don't, I'm going to go with Facebook. I'm going to go with Instagram before that. Instagram, I can at least get good location information on. YouTube, it's a little bit of a guesswork, which is why you almost always see brands that don't really care where the people are. Like if you're advertising for laundry detergent, it doesn't really matter if you're in New Jersey or Arizona. You still have to clean your clothes. So, but for a political race, it really matters where that's at. Does anyone have any questions about negatives? Yeah. No, you can. That's cool. It's all good. Anybody? Yeah.
Do you somehow measure their effectiveness?
Do I know how to measure their effectiveness?
Do you like raise that issue at all?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So for instance, what we're looking for on those negatives. Remember how we said like, okay, here are the two negatives on Elena Parent. And if he hits these negatives, 67% of the people are going to be affected by him, right? We do the same thing with our opponents. We know Cory's weakness. Cory does not like climate change, and Cory does not like birth control, right? Those are two things we know motivate young voters, and we know they hurt Cory Gardner. Cory Gardner is actually in a San Diego congressional seat, not anymore because of those ads. He lost almost exclusively because young voters came out and took him out, right? And they took him out because of that. And those were very, very effective ads. The opponent won maybe 50.9 or something, and it was exclusively because of high turnout among younger voters.
So it was like you, like the campaign managers, they did the poll before that ad and after?
They did it before, and you only have to do it before, because if you're right about the poll, the ads are going to work. Because if the poll's right, the ad will be right, unless they do something, unless they mess up the ad in some way. But I mean, those ads are relatively effective. It's very clear who the target is. Here, I'll show you another one that goes in a very different way for a very different group of people, and hopefully you'll find it equally amusing. This has to do with a solar power campaign.
This is infuriating. Duke Energy's business model is hopelessly outmoded. New battery technologies are so good now that we can power this whole house, this whole state, with reliable, cheaper, local solar power. But Duke Energy is still expanding gas fracking? What is this, the 20th century? Baby, how much Duke Energy stock did Grandpa give you? They're wrecking the climate. And my portfolio.
Okay, so that's obviously a different group of people you're advertising to. I don't know if that's specifically to African American voters, but it was certainly to families and people with kids or people who thought kids were cute. It's obviously a subset of the society that I'm not in. But you can see that it is a negative ad. It doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what to do overall. It just tells you that Duke Power is anti-solar energy and solar energy is good, right? So, issue ads like that are really easy to test because you don't need all those questions about who the person is, right? It's just like, do you like solar energy? Do you dislike people that don't like solar energy? Fantastic. Like, that's all you really need to do. It's a cheaper poll. It's a very easy thing to do. I'm going to show you one more of those, actually, I think. I think I have one in my grouping. Let's see.
I remember my first hearing, meeting my first client, my first day teaching. I was terrified, butterflies in my stomach, but now I own my own firm. I've taught over 200 kids. I couldn't have done it without student loans. I was able to become a lawyer because of student loans. So when I hear that Carl DeMaio backed a budget that would cut student loans, no way. Absolutely the wrong thing to do. That's not okay. Everyone should have the same chance I had, and we can't let a Tea Party politician like Carl DeMaio take that away.
The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
That guy also lost. All right, so...
They just needed to show his picture.
Yeah, the picture. Well, that's not a great picture of poor Carl DeMaio. He looks a little... What's it? Constipated or something? Anyway, the point here is... Yeah, it's got this weird focus. His nose looks weird. But if you notice, all the women... all the people talking to the camera are women. They're all relatively the same age. Those are the people they're going after, and they're going after him on student loans, which is a totally valid thing to do, and that he's wrong about it. This is a D-TRIP ad, which is the congressional committee that's responsible for running all Democratic congressional campaigns, and they came and slammed him if he lost because of it. Okay, so I think that's, what time is it, y'all? Anybody?
4:06.
4:06. Okay, what questions do you have that I haven't answered? Politics, United States, fast food, come on.
Oh, there's
Yes, fast food.
no, about the politics. Do you think that there's any chance that Trump will be impeached?
Is there a chance that Trump will be impeached? That is an excellent question. I will answer it in 3 parts. Okay, in order to get impeached in the United States, this is what you have to do. Articles of impeachment are brought into what's called the House of Representatives, which has 435 people. But the problem, one of the problems with the United States democracy, or one of the benefits, whichever you want to look at it, is that the party that has more seats is the only one that can bring the votes to the floor. So unless the Democrats can get enough seats in Congress to change who the Speaker of the House is, they won't be able to bring impeachment to the floor. So even if they could get a majority of representatives on record as being willing to impeach Trump, unless they're forced to vote on it, it will never actually occur. So in order to get the first step, which is to get impeachment through the House, the Democrats will have to take control of the House. In order to do that, they have to pick like 23 seats. The good news is there's like 24 or 25 seats that Hillary won that Republicans are currently sitting in. So if you could run decent campaigns in those seats and flip them, then you'll flip the Speaker of the House, and then you'll be able to bring articles of impeachment. If Democrats win the House, they will bring articles of impeachment, and it will come through the House. If that happens, it goes to the Senate, okay? The United States Senate is actually who decides whether or not he's removed, okay? At this point, it's passed the House of Representatives. He would be considered impeached, but he doesn't have to leave yet. It's only if the impeachment is like a charge, right? Like a complaint. And then the jury is the U.S. Senate. In the Senate, though, 2/3 of senators have to vote to remove him, for him to be removed from office. So even if the Democrats, now, if it passes the House, the Republicans will have to bring it to the floor, even if they control the Senate, right? The downside for Democrats right now is, so they're down in the Senate 52-48. So there's 52 Republicans, 48 Democrats. 1/3 of the Senate is up this coming year. The problem is it's a bad map for Democrats. What I mean by that is the states that are up this year are sort of red-leaning states. And so it's a very defensive map for Democrats. However, Trump is doing so poorly that it's probably going to be okay. Whether or not they pick up 3 seats, which is what they need to control the chamber, is iffy. But anyway, if it passes the House, the Republicans will have to bring it to the floor. Will they be able to get 67 senators to remove Donald Trump? The only way they're going to be able to do that is if it's an open and shut case. If the Russian investigation produces collusion or anything like that, or shows some sort of a smoking gun, yes. If not, I do not think the Republicans will vote to remove him.
So what do you think right now? Is it more likely
So
yes
you
or more
need
likely
to-
no?
More likely no.
compromise, right?
What'd you say?
You need solid compromise on Trump.
Yeah.
To convince Democrats
Do you have
to
something?
vote against.
Yes, so basically, in order for the Senate to remove, yeah, no, you're fine. For the Senate to remove Trump, they need something super, super solid. Okay. However, if he gets, he's basically in a point now where if the Democrats have a big year in 2018, he's going to be crippled for the rest of his presidency. Now that doesn't mean good things overall, but it means that he won't be able to pass anything. Because if the Democrats control the House, they're going to control the budget and they're going to stymie him, and it's going to be constant investigations. It's going to be nuts. He won't be able to do anything for the next 2 years. They will probably effectively cripple him, and he can't get re-election. But the chances of him actually being impeached, I don't think is that good.
Really,
I know what you think. Anyone? Yeah.
Today we discussed most about online instruments. But for example, in my country, internet is not widely spread.
Yeah.
And which mechanisms we can use to run the face? No,
Yeah.
run
Yep. Yeah, great question. Okay, so the other two main forces that you will see in any kind of a race are two things. One is mail campaigns. That's where you do individual mailers, and I can show you some of those if you'd like. I can show you some from, well, not that campaign, but the Atlanta Parent campaign. The other way is, and this is actually the best way, you just can't do it once you get into certain numbers. Once you get to United States Senate or governor, it's just too many people. President, no way. You can do some of it, but not enough, which is called direct voter contact, which is basically knocking on people's doors. That's actually what they're starting to do in England right now, which is sort of changing a lot of the elections. A lot of the elections you see in England going differently are because they're starting to knock on people's doors. One of the things that Obama brought to American politics was a full canvas system where people would knock on people's doors. And there's this system called Vote Builder. And Vote Builder, which is called VAN in your hand, is an app on your phone. And if you're a Democratic candidate, you will have a list of all the Democratic voters in your district, door by door. And as you walk, it'll tell you who they are, their names, and whether or not they voted, and the results of the last time someone knocked on their door and found out what their top issues are. So you can go and knock on their door and find out what they're all about. The way in which we generally do is we do what's called a voter ID on the door. Is we find out whether or not they're with us or against us on a scale of 1 to 5, as someone mentioned earlier. 4s and 5s being our team, 1s and 2s being on the other side, 3s being undecided.
That's the day of the election, right?
No. We start out, we go 3 months out. In that state Senate race, our candidate knocked on, this is not a joke, 13,000 doors herself. So you can do that. It's actually easier if you don't have internet, because you can do all this without anybody knowing. Yeah.
13,000. How much percent was that
of the total doors?
Yeah.
There are well, so there's 180,000 people who live in the district, but obviously that's not 180,000 homes. But the only people you care about are the people who are going to vote, not this guy on your team. I'm just playing. Okay. But yeah, so that's my answer. You can do mail and you can do in person. You can also do phones. But that's a little more difficult, and I don't think it moves people as much. There's other political strategists will tell you that phones are actually more important than doors, but I disagree.
We don't have a properly working mailing system, so.
Well, that's the second thing. If you can knock on people's doors, you will end up winning. If you can bring your candidate or someone who's a proxy for your candidate in front of someone, and you can get them to agree with you, they're going to vote for you, that person's solid. Because people will, as much as it's going to be surprising, people will not lie to you in person. They just won't.
But in our country, it's a little bit different because there's a lot of pressure, like the administrative resources working, and people who want to actually vote for someone.
Yeah.
They're threatened to voting for someone else.
Do you have a secret ballot?
We have, but it's kind of we kind of have it, but people either they can see it or they threaten that they can know in the end, and that's why.
And voter intimidation is really tough to deal with.
And people, this administrative resource, when they are told to vote, they usually go and vote what they are told to. If they lie, then when they are checked, their lie is caught really easily.
Yeah, that's a tough thing. You're going to have to have a massive amount of people. Because the thing about it, the only way, if you have individuals that are worried about their vote, the only way it works is if you have a tremendous amount of people who are going to switch. And so you have to have public rallies and do all those things.
Yeah,
and
we
people,
had a
people
problem
know.
where like the whole district had like 0%, and
Yeah, so
and
that's it.
someone tried to vote for the other opponent, and he got beaten in front of the election.
Yeah, that's not good. I don't know any kind of ads that are going to help that.
This really works when rules are defined and everybody follows the rules. When someone doesn't follow the rules, then what you can do, then you have to change the whole system, that everybody should
Right, I
follow
mean,
the rules.
that's the thing. It's like if you don't have a democratic
Unit
system.
revolution, I think.
Oh, well, okay.
No.
That's enough for us. Can someone turn off the camera before we start talking about revolution? I mean, it's a totally different. I have a presentation on that, but it's just very different.
Let's move to the United States, for example.
Oh yes, okay, know about it.
For example, we discussed about gender, about minorities, but
we don't have gender anymore. But
okay,
continue.
how you work with how you work with old age voters?
Yeah.
With, for example, 50, 60 age. Seniors.
Yeah, old people.
Yes.
Yeah, what about them?
Which mechanism to use?
We speak much louder. So old people are heavily responsive to mail, and they were heavily responsible to door knocks, and they're heavily responsible to what are called robocalls. They don't actually differentiate between robots calling them and actual people. It's kind of weird.
So sweet.
So what you can do is if you have a well-known person that they like, call them up and say, hey, this is, I don't know, Chuck Woolery, it doesn't matter, old person that they like. And I want you to vote for X. They'll be like, that's a great idea. Not realizing it's a recording. So those are extremely effective with old people. The individual issues, you can test them, just like you would test with anything else. So we knew that the young people would be interested in birth control and climate change. Senior citizens, for the most part, don't react to climate change at all as an issue. I'm not sure if it's just because they're like, well, this is taking longer than I really have time for. But they really will react to anything you talk about involving Medicare, which is sort of our senior citizen healthcare system in the United States. They will react to that. And so you can figure out what the equivalent is. Any of those sort of things. Like if you can figure out a campaign that says like, your grandson will call you if you vote for my candidate, you'll get every single one of them. But because the influence, there's actually an entire political campaign in 2008 that was based on that concept. It was called
in Miami or something.
Yeah, it was called the Great Schlep. I'm not kidding. And so it would involve people whose grandparents lived in Florida who would go down and get their grandparents to vote for Barack Obama. It's incredibly effective because like the grandkids never call them. And so they're like, fine, I will vote if you agree to call me. That's the entire concept. So you figure out, just like anybody else, people that are over the age of 55, over the age of 65, ask them what they want. Ask them what they want. Force them into a dichotomy, and then you're going to find out what they really care about. Yeah, it's probably small boxes of raisins in my experience. What's that?
So the only thing that it's interesting for me that is the money. So how much money goes?
Old people do like money.
Yeah. How much money you spend for the campaign? I mean, overall in the U.S. for during the president election. That it's and the second one is
Ignore
about it goes.
presidential because it's a huge swath. Because the presidential, as much money as you give a presidential campaign, they will spend. And no matter how much you give them, it won't be enough.
It goes from the budget or it goes from the company?
I don't understand. Oh,
the money.
So money, campaigns in the United States are all based on donations, contributions. So individuals give money to campaigns, and they have limits for how much money they can give to a campaign.
And the effective methods, what can be to bring guys like him to go to vote?
Yeah, we do want him to vote.
Yes.
Yeah, we know you're not going to. I'm just kidding, you're going to vote.
And just effective methods to just make the people that are not usually voting to go and vote. Did you have some campaigns actually on this? Or it's not relevant for you? For you, it's relevant that who is voting to somehow control them. It's not important for you to go many people.
It's important to me. I would rather more people vote. There's an overall democratic theory that the more people that vote, the better it is for the Democratic Party. That said, the people you can see very easily how quick the fall off is between definite voters and likely voters. So the city of Atlanta just had a mayoral race, right? The city of Atlanta has like 500,000 people in it. And they had a turnout of 90,000 in the mayoral race, okay? Among people that we targeted that we thought were likely voters, 50% of them vote. The next group, which was less likely voters, 9% voted. So the reality of the situation is people don't actually change their voting habits. The people that vote every time will probably vote. The people that didn't vote before probably won't. And so you can't, if you have a tremendous amount of money, you can try and target those people that don't vote that much. You can try and get them to register. You can try and turn them out. But the likelihood of them voting is actually quite small. If you have enough money, you can do it. But the incremental difference, the marginal cost of a new voter is much greater than getting a voter that you know is going to vote for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And all political parties are working on this to just shift this voters, and really it's not in their interest to work on many people because it will be
there's a slight difference.
expensive.
That's true. That's true. So there's individual political campaigns. So like, let's say I'm running for office. What is my campaign trying to do? And then there's the overall party. The party is trying to expand the electorate. They're trying to register more voters. They're trying to get more people interested. They're trying to get young people fired up. They're trying to get old people to vote for them. They're trying to do all those things. The individual party, the individual candidate doesn't have as much money and doesn't have the ability to change the entire electorate. They have to sort of deal with the people they already have. You know what I mean? You have to sort of go to war with the people you got. And so you can only really play with that group of people. The group, well, that went away. But the group of people that have already said that they're going to vote, those are the people you target. You can't waste time or money targeting people you don't think are going to vote. But the party might. But they're talking about, you know, a much greater time window than you are. Like, for instance, that political race started in March, ended in May. There's no time to really get other people involved, if that makes sense. Any more questions? Anybody in the back have any questions? No?
Oh,
yes.
Sorry, the last one.
You're almost in the back. Go ahead.
How would your campaign change if you were in a situation where you can, when you don't have the information, whether the person voted or not?
Mm-hmm. Like whether or not they're likely to vote? I would just ask them. I mean, it's tough to do, but you can certainly do it. You can figure it out.
So if you didn't have this information about the voters, like the previous voting,
Yep.
it wouldn't change the messaging system?
It makes it less secure because you're not as sure of what your group of people is, but you can use proxies for it. So if you can figure out what the markers are of people that vote, then you can just use the markers. So let's say, for instance, you know that people over the age of 55 are much more likely to vote. You can then target people that are over the age of 55 and use it as a proxy for people to vote.
So it's just your first step becomes determining the groups that are more likely to vote.
Yeah, yeah. Figure out what the people that are more likely to vote, and then just use the secondary markers. Yeah, use the demographic markers. You can absolutely do that. If you go and knock on people's doors, right, and get them to vote for you, I don't know how to deal with the beating up thing, and I'm not trying to make light of it. I just don't know how to deal with it. But they will be much more likely to vote for you. I mean, if you can get enough people to feel like they're together on something, that they're part of something that's bigger than themselves, they will do things that will surprise you. And that's what you're seeing in a lot of these races. So in Georgia, we just had some special elections, which is what happens when somebody resigns, right? You have something outside the normal. And we won 3 seats that nobody expected us to win, where no Democrat had even run for office in 10 years. And the reason why is because people went out there and they knocked on doors and they made people feel that they were bigger, that they could do this, that they were part of something bigger than themselves, and that this person was a representative of something that they believed, and that they would make themselves a part of that, right? And they sort of self-branded. They said, I'm a Democrat, and I'm going to support this person, I'm going to walk out and do it. And they won all those races. And if you can win one race, then the next race becomes so much easier. So, all right, any more questions?
Have you any links with, sorry.
Links
Have you any these methods, how they work in Europe?
I could look it up, but I will tell you that I don't think there's, this is the thing, if you can get the right message to people, people will go with you. Now, they have maybe have different democratic situations, they may be more likely to vote, less likely to vote, but the reality is that people believe in things, and if you can tap into that, and if you can give them a reason to go vote, or a reason to vote against the other guy, I think they're likely to do it. Anybody got any more?
When the US is moving to the fully electronic voting this time? have any idea.
You mean get rid of the electoral college, or what are you talking about?
No, like
Online?
you don't go somewhere to vote.
You just vote online.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean,
Do you think
anyone
it
that
will-
disagrees with me, I tell them they can vote online, so maybe we'll slowly get there.
But it will bring more people to vote now.
Theoretically, you know, there are a lot of states that do only mail voting, which works pretty well. Not men, like mail-in voting. Well, we used to have only mail voting, but that didn't work very well. That was prior to 1913 when we started letting women vote.
But it was a couple days voting, not one day.
Yeah, well, we have early voting now, which means you can sort of vote anytime in the previous 6 weeks. But you have to go to special locations. Our voting system is not super democratic, okay? We make it extremely hard. We make old people produce a driver's license even when they don't drive. We do a lot of things to make it more difficult for people to vote.
Is there reasons behind it?
Well, yeah. A lot of them are pretty cynical ones
Should
too.
decrease the number of people who
Yeah, I mean, voter suppression is a real thing. I mean, it's an absolute real thing. And if current lawmakers, the best way of voter suppression you see now is what's called gerrymandering, which is drawing districts to to keep the minority in the minority. But So the answer to that is hopefully, but it's going to be incremental change. Maybe 12 years. Anybody? Well, listen, I thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out with me in a super hot room. And I hope you guys learned something about this. If you have any questions or anything, or want to know the outcome of any of these elections that we talked about, just email me and I'll be happy to send it to you. I'm on the app. My Twitter handle is @Stefan Turk, STEFANTURK. I am moderately off-putting on Twitter, but not terribly. So that's good. All right, cool. Anything else?
Thank you.
Sweet.